Looks like it's time to kick Amius's butt again. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and it looks like our least favorite boss in the game is back. Yeah, that's right. We have Amius here. We are ready to attack him, and much like some of the previous rotations, we've got a secret weapon here. Now, just to go over a few things that we've learned. So there's a couple things with Amius that you generally are going to want to look for when you're building a team. If you have some way to prevent ignore defense, specifically, I guess Harima is probably the only person I'm aware of that does that. That is a huge, huge advantage in staying alive against the boss. Honestly, any kind of way to mitigate damage will help as well. So passives like Pythions can be certainly helpful. Harimas, as we mentioned beforehand, Duchess could be helpful. There's a couple of different champions that have passives that assist with damage reduction, and damage reduction can keep you alive through some of his nukes, and staying alive through some of his nukes means you're less reliant on healers. There's all kinds of cool ways to deal with that. Rhodos is actually a particularly good way to deal with that as well. I suspect Taurus would probably work fairly well because he has some ways to reduce some of that as well, especially if you have a Marichka. Mari Taurus would be great against him. It really does depend on the rotation as well, because obviously you are limited by what rotation you have. Next up, you certainly are going to want something like Brimstone. Burns can be very, very effective as well. Poisons less so, but poisons, if you can stack them quite a bit, can be very good as well. So that's like someone like a Nishak is great. Nishak is specifically good because Nishak brings unremovable poisons. So the boss can't actually get rid of them. That's great. So unremovable poisons, unremovable burns would be great, but I don't know any ways to do those. Brimstone is also king of damage. Brimstone will do tons of damage. Finally, Life Harvest can help quite a bit because this boss, it's always difficult to kind of pin him down and get him when it's the right rotation. So if you can get his max HP down, he'll start healing less, particularly if you're not able to get block healing on him. And if you are able to get block healing on him, it makes it a lot easier for you to not have to deal with max HP hits, max HP destruction. That's where Life Harvest really comes in. So there's an awful lot going on with this boss, and that's just the easy stuff. Obviously, we can't do resets. You'd want to avoid some buffs. You got to be careful about timing some buffs. Protected buffs are great. So if you have protection gear, that can be very good, or champions that throw protected buffs up there can be very, very good. Reflecting damage can be helpful, although you definitely don't want to use just the reflect damage buff. You're looking at Geomancer reflex that are good. Brogni reflex can be good as well. So there's a lot of cool ways we can attack this, but let's take a look and see what we've done against this boss this time. Ooh, this should be fun. This should probably be fairly easy. Morrigan is actually a great secret weapon and MVP against Amius in this particular rotation. Why? Well, let's try not removing her. Let's go in and take a look at her kit. So looking at Morrigan's kit here, it's her passive that makes her very, very valuable. She does a heal reduction against the enemy with the lowest HP. Now there's only one enemy, so that makes it really easy to figure out who's going to get it. And this debuff cannot be removed, transferred, or spread. It's a passive, and it's a 2-turn cooldown. So as long as she's getting 1 turn every 2 times the boss goes, heal reduction is always up and always on. And that makes her kit great. She also, however, does some turn meter increase for your champions and throws increased speed. Now, this can be problematic if the increased speed becomes decreased speed, so you got to be careful about this. But the turn meter boost can be very helpful as well. She also has a steal buffs from target enemies, so if he flips the buffs around, you can steal some of those and then do decreased accuracy against the boss. The true fear is only against champions, not bosses. And then finally, she throws a decreased speed up there with her A1. Again, this could be annoying if he gets decreased speed and flips it to increased speed, but I believe he might be immune to decreased speed. I'm not sure. Regardless, it's not a bad A1. It can be problematic for this particular scenario. But overall, she also has the 19% speed in all battles, which means the aura is really, really good and easy to use. So going back to the team we've got here, I've got Sify. Sify is great. She brings a ton of healing. She brings the increased defense. She brings increased speed. She brings block debuffs. Those can be very useful, but you do have to time them correctly. She's got an A1 that can do some decent healing, which is great. And finally, for the Rhodoses, she'll strip all the debuffs off of Rhodoses automatically as well. Rhodoses have a lot of damage reduction, so they can actually not be one-shot by the boss, which is great. And they'll also steal some max HP and get themselves additional HP, so they'll be tanky and they'll do additional damage. So Rotos can be great. Now, I'm sure all you guys are not going to have a Siphi Rotos combination, so we'll look at other combinations as well. But this is the mostly undead. And then finally, we've got Godseeker, because Godseeker does some passive healing. She has an emergency revive on whoever actually dies. And then between Siphi and Godseeker here, we've got a good amount of revives. So let's go run this boss and take a look and see how this works. I'm going to manual this just because I think that this is not only a boss that kind of requires manualing, but if you let it on auto, it's too easy to run away from you. So we'll manual this and I'll record it. Maybe I'll pop in a little bit, but otherwise, hopefully this is fairly smooth. So we're winding down with this particular run, and yeah, it took me 6.5 minutes, but it's been pretty straightforward. He's never had block healing taken off, and I've never really been in danger. Every once in a while, one of my champions has died, and Godseeker's passive has generally brought them back. And other than my Morgaine being a bit squishy, it's been pretty straightforward. So, and this should be the final strike. There we go. Nice, easy. Didn't even get a revive in. Amius complete. So let's go take a look and see what other types of teams we can do if you don't have the double Siphi Rhodos combo that I've got right here. Morgaine was a fusion. Hopefully a lot of you still have her. She's actually a really good champion. She got kind of thrown down as a meh fusion, but honestly, she does a lot of good and she's very useful in a lot of situations. And again, I like running her with a lot of the undead stuff. And you know, she's certainly been pulling her weight here, even if it doesn't look like she's done much. Okay, looking through some champions that I've got, and obviously my roster is going to be different than a lot of yours. I put this together as a team that I think would be kind of interesting. Elenarl has an irresistible burn on her A1, so you can basically constantly keep burn up against the boss, which is good. You still are going to want her with some accuracy if you've got Brimstone on her, although to be fair, you could certainly put Brimstone on Morgaine instead of the banner we've got here, and Morgaine will then, because she's going to need the accuracy as well, so that's a certain option. A Kemptum is an interesting option because he can put up to 3 poisons up with his A1. You'll probably just not bother using his A2. Mine's in stun gear, and I think in this particular build, the stun gear build is not going to do it. You're going to need a lot more accuracy. You need about 450 accuracy, maybe a little more, to really be consistent landing debuffs on this. He also does have an aura, so for some reason you don't have Morgaine and you're struggling to do this, you can certainly use his aura instead, although it's only an 18% compared to Morgaine's 19%. Arby is definitely somebody that most of you should have, especially if you're doing hard. Arby is great against the Archon because she's got an AoE revive. She has the turn meter boost as well, which is good, some pretty solid healing. Overall, she can be very, very good, and because she's super fast, she'll spur your team on to take a bunch of turns, which is absolutely amazing. And then again, Godseeker, hopefully you've got a Godseeker. If not, there's a couple of other revivers we can look at as well. Just checking around at other champions you might think about using on my account. Wallmaster is a max HP hitter, so he could be very interesting against this. Given there is a option to use a Kemptum, I think Marius may actually work on this, although I suspect a lot of you guys don't have Marius yet, because that's still a long way to go. You've got a couple different options here. You could certainly throw a Shamail on and see if reversing some of those buffs actually would help with the Shamail, but he's going to be more straight damage. Other options, Ugo is not bad because she's got a cleanse, which can be very helpful, and some healing, and she does have a decreased defense and block buffs, but block buffs will be turned into block debuffs, so you got to be very careful about that. Venus could be very interesting. Venus brings a lot of burns. She brings poisons on her A1. She brings decreased defense and weaken. Those could get reversed and be bad, but you got to be careful with that. And of course, you can always just not use the decreased defense and weaken. And meanwhile, the burn's very good. Poison's very good. If you build her for your brimstone as well, that could be very, very helpful. If you're just looking for raw damage, Vlad could do some damage. In fact, Vlad brings you the decreased max HP on his A1, which means he can be a very useful direct damage dealer if you've done that fusion, if your account's that old. Obviously, he's a Void Legendary, so having him is going to be kind of rare. So there are a couple different options. I'm not going to be running every single one of them through here as different alternates. But Morgaine is absolutely a beast in this rotation if you can use her. Rhodos, absolutely great, even if you don't have a Siphi. And obviously, if you have a Siphi and a Rhodos, it's a great pair to run against Amius. I did hop over on my alt to take a look at my alt to see if I did any other champions, and reminded me here that Little Miss Annie is actually really good against Amius as well. I don't have her built for damage here. I have her built for high accuracy because she has an A1 that can fairly reliably land the block healing. So that is very helpful. And Nishak, who apparently I missed looking over my current champions on my main account, he is an amazing champion. I believe I mentioned him early in the video as well. Nishak's poisons are unremovable. The bombs do some additional damage. Other than the fact he's a bit squishy, he is a great damage dealer. This team, I believe, actually did beat the boss with quite a bit of manual work, obviously, with 3 healers, the decreased healing with Little Miss Annie, and of course Nishak. It's a long, tedious manual process, but it was one that actually did work. Certainly, if my champions were maybe a little better built, and again, this is my alt, or maybe I could certainly swap out an Arbiter for some other champion that might be able to do a bit more damage or bring some additional brimstone. Something along those lines might help. But overall, this is another team that you could use. Nishak is a great champion for Amius, and Little Miss Annie is another one you could use for block healing. So good luck to you guys. Hopefully this has been kind of helpful. I know it's been kind of a quick guide and unlike some of the other ones I've done, but there's an awful lot we summed up in the beginning of this, and there's an awful lot we have learned about Amius along this journey. So hopefully this all helps you out, and hopefully you're kicking Amius out of Centranos yourself. Till the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.